What if I told you that every single day, governments silently take money out of your pocket without ever raising taxes? It doesn't happen with a knock on your door. It doesn't happen with a bill in the mail. It happens through a secret tactic so powerful entire empires have collapsed because of it. From ancient Rome to modern America, leaders discovered that when their debts grew too large, they could use this one hidden weapon to pay for wars, fund massive projects, and keep their power. But here's the catch. It always came at a devastating cost to ordinary people. People just like you. And today, governments are still using the very same trick. You may not see it, but you feel it. In rising prices, shrinking savings, and the silent theft of your wealth. So, what exactly is this tactic? And why are governments desperate to keep it hidden? To understand this hidden weapon, we need to step back. Because inflation isn't just about prices going up at the grocery store. It's about how governments quietly manipulate the value of money itself. For centuries, rulers faced the same problem. They spent more than they earned. Wars, palaces, salaries for soldiers, giant projects, all cost far more than the taxes they collected. And when the treasury ran dry, they had two choices: admit they were broke, or find a way to cheat the system. Rome, for example, once ran on pure silver coins, but when emperors ran out of money, they discovered a clever trick. Instead of raising taxes, they simply melted the coins down, mixed in cheaper metals, and reissued them as if nothing had changed. On the surface, people still held money. In reality, its value had already been stolen. Centuries later, kings in medieval Europe copied the same playbook. And in the 20th century, governments moved from gold-backed money to printed paper. Different tools, same trick. Each time, the tactic worked at first. Leaders bought themselves time, funded armies, or built monuments. But ordinary citizens, they were left holding money that was worth less and less every single year. And the scariest part? That ancient pattern hasn't gone away. It's still happening right now, just in a more sophisticated disguise. The story of this hidden tactic begins with a simple truth. Money has always been built on trust. In the early days, coins were made of precious metals, gold and silver that carried real value. People trusted them because they were scarce, hard to produce, and universally desired. But rulers soon realized something dangerous. They could create more money than they actually had. By shaving the edges off coins, mixing them with cheaper metals, or later, by printing paper notes backed by nothing, governments could stretch their resources. It looked harmless at first. Soldiers were paid. Merchants were satisfied. The empire seemed strong. But beneath the surface, a storm was building. Rome was one of the first great examples. By the 3rd century, emperors had drained their treasury with endless wars and public spending. Instead of cutting costs, they debased their coins. Silver denarii, once 90% pure, fell to barely 5% silver. To the naked eye, it still looked like money, but its value was already gone. The result? Rampant inflation. A loaf of bread that once cost a few coins now required sacks of worthless money. Soldiers demanded higher pay. Farmers abandoned the markets. Ordinary families saw their savings evaporate overnight. Fast forward to modern times. In 1971, the United States faced its own turning point. President Nixon ended the gold standard, cutting the final link between the dollar and real value. For the first time in history, the U.S. dollar became purely fiat, backed not by gold, but only by faith in the government. That moment unlocked the modern era of money printing, stimulus, and debt-financed economies. And just like Rome, leaders discovered the short-term benefits were enormous, but the long-term costs were catastrophic. The consequences of this tactic have always been the same, and always brutal. In Rome, inflation hollowed out the middle class. Farmers fled their lands, trade collapsed, and the empire, once the richest in the world, became too weak to defend itself. In Weimar Germany, after World War I, the government printed money to pay off impossible debts. Prices doubled every few days. People carried banknotes in wheelbarrows just to buy bread. A lifetime of savings could vanish in a single afternoon. And today? You may not see wheelbarrows of cash on the streets, but the effect is no less real. Your paycheck buys less each year. Housing becomes unreachable. Debt grows faster than wages. It's the same silent theft, carried out with digital dollars instead of silver coins. This is the hidden pattern. Leaders survive, elites adapt, but ordinary people always pay the price. The truth is, this secret inflation tactic never disappeared. It simply evolved. Today, governments no longer melt coins or dilute silver. Instead, they create money with a keyboard stroke. Central banks inject trillions into the economy through quantitative easing, stimulus programs, and endless debt. On paper, it sounds technical. In reality, it's the same ancient trick. Expand the money supply, quietly erode its value, and hope people don't notice. Think about it. In the last 2 decades, the U.S. national debt has exploded from just over $5 trillion to more than $30 trillion. Europe has printed billions to keep its economies afloat. China has done the same to fuel massive growth. The tactic is everywhere, and the side effects are just as predictable. Ordinary people feel it in daily life. Groceries that used to cost $50 now take $80. Houses that once sold for $150,000 now demand $500,000. Your savings account earns interest, but inflation eats it away faster. It's not labeled as a tax, but that's exactly what it is. A hidden tax on your purchasing power. Unlike income tax, it doesn't appear on your pay stub. It shows up when your money buys less, year after year, and just like Rome, just like Weimar Germany, just like every empire before, governments believe they can get away with it forever. But history tells us they can't. History leaves us with 3 powerful lessons about this secret tactic. Lesson 1. Inflation isn't always an accident. More often, it's a deliberate policy, a tool governments use when they're drowning in debt. Instead of cutting spending or raising taxes, they quietly let inflation eat away at the value of what they owe. It's a way of escaping their own mistakes, but you pay the price. Lesson 2. Real wealth isn't paper money. Empires rise and fall, currencies come and go, but tangible assets, land, resources, skills, and innovation survive. In Rome, those who owned farmland and goods weathered the storm better than those who clutched fading coins. Today, it's the same. Savings left in cash melt away, while hard assets and investments hold their ground. Lesson 3. Trust is the foundation of every economy. Once people stop believing in money, collapse isn't far behind. Rome's silver coins, Weimar's paper marks, Zimbabwe's trillion-dollar bills all became worthless not because they disappeared, but because people no longer believed they were real. The same risk exists today. So when you hear politicians talk about managing inflation or stimulating growth, remember, behind those words is an ancient tactic that has destroyed empires, hollowed out economies, and rewritten history. And unless we learn from it, we could be watching the same story unfold in our own lifetime. Rome thought it could trick its citizens with coins that looked real but carried no value. Weimar Germany thought it could print its way out of debt. Zimbabwe believed it could make its people rich with trillion-dollar notes. Every time, the result was the same: collapse, chaos, and the destruction of trust. And today, our governments are walking down that very same path, just dressed in modern language, stimulus, quantitative easing, economic recovery. But behind the polished words is the same ancient tactic of silent theft. The question is not if this strategy will backfire. The question is when. Because history is clear. No empire, no government, no currency has ever escaped the consequences of inflating its way out of debt. So the next time you wonder why your paycheck feels smaller, why groceries cost more, why saving for the future feels impossible, remember, this is not an accident. It's a policy, a weapon, a strategy that governments don't want you to see. And if history is any guide, the people who understand it early are the ones who survived the storm.